Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. I've got the Ranger Dina Wakley Ledger Journal on the mat today, and I've already given this page spread a watery wash of gesso just to soften back. This yellow is a bit in your face for me. Even though I'm planning to go for autumnal tones, I'm very much in autumnal mode still. The last of the leaves are still on the trees here, so yeah, it's I'm hoping to stay kind of loose, a bit messy, a bit playful. I've got Tim Holtz leafy stencil here. I've got my own twisted falling leaves or butterflies or blossom or birds stencil there, and I'm thinking maybe some umbellifers or meadow grasses coming up from the bottom. There might be some cut out stamped leaves to go on. There might be some leafy die cuts. I don't really know. I'm gonna start and then see where I land up. I think I'm gonna start with a bit of just blending ink onto these pages. In fact, I might run, yeah, I might just run some pumice stone just down from the top, just to start us off with something. So this is the pumice stone distress spray stain. I've unscrewed it, done that, and then I'm just gonna do this so that that ink goes walkabout down the page in that water, just to create a sort of, I don't know, a vintagey messiness that will just encourage me to be as messy as I like on the page after this. I'm going to try and not be too naturalistic, though my inclination will still be, I think, probably, to have my umbels growing up from the ground and maybe my leaves dropping down from the sky, but we'll see. We'll see how things go. But yeah, I just want to create a bit of messiness, really, a bit of unpredictability. And the unpredictable thing is that I've already managed to lose my water sprayer. How is that possible? I was just this minute using it, wasn't I? There it is, fallen over. So I'm gonna let this move from here, a little bit of finger movement of these, and I've just noticed I haven't got, I quite like that coming down from the top. I think I'd quite like it coming up from the bottom as well. And I might do that a different way. Oh, I won't do a spritz because it doesn't want to come out. There is, however, some ink around the top of there, so I'll just use that. What I was about to say I just noticed is that I haven't got my craft mat in place. I might leave that corner at the moment free of mess. Thinking about knocking some of this back in the middle, just a little bit. And I'm liking the sort of, I'm very much liking the randomness of it, but this will add extra texture. I'm going to leave those bits at the top. As I dry this, it will become a little bit less in your face in any case. I'm just going to soften those bits. Yeah, I'm going to give this a blast with the heat tool, and you'll see as we come back that it will be a little less full on. So there are some lovely messy textures there, just adding, yeah, fascination to the background. I can see there's still some water droplets on the page, but I'm not going to worry overly much about those. I'm now aiming for what I sort of started with, is maybe just to have a bit of an impression of leaves flying through the air. I could do this with sprays, but I think I want a little bit more control than that. So this is Rusty Hinge Distress Ink, just through a couple of these leaves here, and I think we might want a little bit of vintage photo in play as well. This is going to be quite similar to some backgrounds I did for some tags recently, and I want this quite loose and soft, so I'm going to give that a spritz of water. I'm also going to give this a spritz of water and just print it the other way up, just pick up some of those colours in reverse Let's see if we can create a little bit more randomness. I want some darker leaves as well, so I might add in some gathered twigs, but I don't think I'm going to bother changing sponge, so that will be just a gradual. I definitely want this messed up a bit more. I want that on the go, and then I'm going to spritz that again and maybe stamp that in there, and then allow this to drift also in this direction. We're now getting a slightly darker colour because that's had those on. Just going to let that drift across the page in this direction. Soften. Just put one leaf somewhere in the middle here, in a very soft kind of way. Another one up here in a fairly soft kind of way. Yeah, that's quite enjoyable. Just the drift of leaves down the page. And then I think what might be quite nice, let's just use up the ink that's left on there, down in this corner, might as well, like so, just kind of create that autumnal glow. What I might do is come back in over a couple of these with something a bit darker. So what's going to be dark enough? Maybe a bit of walnut stain. Where's my walnut stain? That's in the same pile with the rusty hinge. And a slightly darker sponge. And what I might do is just reposition this. Can't remember which way up it was. That'll be close enough, because what I'm going to do is just go around the lower edge of that to give ourselves a darker leafy shadow. That was definitely this way up. Surely. Oh, I see, I've layered it a couple of times, haven't I? So let's just give ourselves a little dark shadow there. Let's give ourselves a little dark shadow on one of these oak leaves. They're definitely oak. I recognise them. In fact, I was picking some up off the floor yesterday. I might even come in with some, this is the full-on scorched timber, which is a really, really dark. It's about as dark as a brown gets before it turns to black. And it's a beauty. Oh yes, see, look, that gives us a beautiful shadowiness. Let's take this oak leaf here. Give that the same treatment. So we're just now creating some layers of, oh yes, that's nice. So I was right about wanting to be messy today. I want to just create that impression of tumbling leaves. I think that's rather beautiful. A little bit of dark over here, maybe. So I'm really not going even through whole leaves at a time. I'm just getting the impression of those tumbling leaves. I might give that a little bit more edge to it. That's nice. And then what I think my own twisty stencil is going to do rather beautifully is give us a sense of distant leaves or tumbling leaves with even a bit more swirling movement. I'm going to go between the orange and the brown to just add that extra touch of swirl to these falling leaves. That's sort of, I think, what was maybe somewhere in my head. Creating that movement and that dynamism and that sort of energy in the air. I could hear, when I was on my walk yesterday, there were places where the leaves were really hurtling to the ground and you could hear the pitter-patter of those leaves falling. And then we might put a bit of base leaf down here in the scorched timber, a bit of groundedness, a bit of inking around the edge, and that's giving us quite a nice sense of autumn leaf fall, I think, just through the air. I'm in two minds about whether to add some blue to this for falling through a blue sky. There was a glorious blue sky yesterday. It was really beautiful. I'm just putting in another orange leaf down there. I just want a bit more definition on a couple of these. So I'm going to replace and just redefine a couple of these leaves, so we've got a bit more leaf edge going on in places. Bit more presence to a couple of these. That's nice over the scorched timber. That's quite pleasurable. Got a oak leaf here. Maybe we can zhuzh him up a little bit. I'm not being terribly bothered about whether it's the right one or not. That's a beautiful tumble of leaves, I think. I've now got lids off everything, so I need to make sure I get the right lid back on the right ink. That's the walnut stain. This is the vintage photo. This is rusty hinge. I can recognise that without turning it upside down, which means this must be scorched timber, hopefully. Yeah, grand. So get the lids back on the right things. And then I think, yeah, maybe just a bit of pumice stone flicking, maybe just a bit of inky splotchiness. Again, I can knock this back just with a bit of kitchen towel if I feel it gets too much. It's interesting where it's spreading out in the water. That's catching my eye in a bad way. I like the little dots, and I might let those sit for a bit longer. Sort of want to reform that leaf up there a little bit. Was it you? Was it you? Could be either of you. Doesn't really matter. Just want to give a little bit more edging to that. Good, I'm enjoying that leafy tumble. Now I'm going to knock these dots back a little bit. They've had long enough to see whether my eye enjoys them. But again, it's just that extra bit of messiness, that extra bit of random detailing. And then I think what I want to do is add some stamping of various Umbels. I've got my Umbellifer stamps out in force, but before I do that, I maybe want a little bit of background meadow grassiness. I'm not going to do a massive cleaning job on these stencils. None of what's on them, whether it's paint or ink, is going to mean they can't work properly. I think I want these maybe in just some grey. So these are my Grassy stencils from earlier in the year. Gonna go with maybe a pumice stone grass, if that'll show up enough. If it won't, I might go back in with a darker brown or grey. Just gonna try not to think too hard about this. I want it as background. I don't want it as major input. On the other hand, I do love these grassy stems, and so if I decide I want a bit more presence from them, it'll be easy enough to go in either with another layer of the pumice stone or with something a bit darker. I think it does want to be something a little bit darker, doesn't it? I'll try some walnut stain. Is a good cool brown. Scorched timber is an even cooler brown, but at the moment let's stick with scorched timber. Is going to be really quite full on. This I do want to see if I can mostly layer over the same place again. If you shift them around, there comes a point where you just kind of pop into focus and you kind of go, oh, that's where I was. Let's put a little bit more dark into these. It would help if I did it with the dark sponge, wouldn't it? There you are. That'll give me a head start. I'm pressing quite lightly though with this sponge. I could go in with a much firmer coat, but I don't want to go too far too quickly. I can always add more layers. It's tougher to take it off. That has slightly done a shadow drop, but I don't think I entirely mind. I think it's quite nice. So maybe with this one I will leave that very delicate one in place, and I'll just go in with a darker one next to it instead of trying to get over the top of it. I think I am interested in layers here in sort of depth. I do love the softness that this stencil gives you. If you want a bit more definition, you can always go in with a pen or pencil, do a little bit of random sketchiness. That's quite nice. Might go the other direction with this one, so you can have your stems bending either way. Come through in one direction, you get them blowing in the breeze to the north, and the other way you get them blowing in the breeze to the south. So we might put one of these up here, I think, just really into the distance. Real softness. I want a bit more. I want a bit more of that one. So let's get you into there. A bit more firm pressure. Yeah, that's nice. Might start coming across here a bit further. And again, I've got the leaves drifting in one direction across both pages. So I'm inclined to let the grasses drift both ways across the page in this direction. So it's just creating a real movement, hopefully, a life, an excitement, a dynamism. That's pretty. What one going that way? Maybe you. Again, a bit lighter with this one. Less pressure means less ink transfer. Nice. And maybe one more, but maybe back to the gentle pumice stone, I think. Where's my grey brush? Hoping I'm on camera. I still haven't got my craft mat out, have I? Well, so far I've not been very messy, so that's probably all right. Yeah, that's nice. That's giving me energy in one direction, then energy in the other direction. Let's have a look at some of those layers so you can see what's happening. Just a really lovely kind of airbrushed softness to it at the moment. How many browns and greys and we used so far? We definitely used those. We didn't use those. We definitely used walnut stone and pumice stone. We haven't used those. Just trying to keep track of what's in the mix already. Right, I do want to do some stamping, I think. So I sounded so definite and then I backed off. I'm just wondering about putting one more bit of, is that the grey or the brown? I want brown. More definite grassiness down here before I start stamping. I can do some more stenciling afterwards, but my brain likes to work from the background into the foreground. So coming back later to create more background makes less sense to me than trying to get a sense of that lovely soft distance. Then stamp, oh look, always a sign of a good time. Definite inky fingers. Umbellifers. So I've got my new twisted Umbels. They're a possibility. They're very soft and delicate. I'm thinking that what I almost certainly want is a little bit of work from the winter Umbel, because that's got quite a lot of presence. And then there are also the pressed Umbels, possible umbelliferous assistance. There are some little ones here as well on this winter one, which could be nice. I think we might start by putting this one down, because as I say, it's sort of the most present. And what I might do is stamp in distress for a bit of background, because that means I can always soften it with a spritz of water. And then as we come into the foreground, I might do a bit more with some archival inks, because they'll be a lot more firm and definite and precise. This just gives me the option of softening it if I want to, but at the moment I'm rather enjoying that. I think that's rather nice. And then where these stems are not long enough, what I very often do is make sure I ink up the stem and then just eyeball it to create the rest of that. And it's fine if you get these little knots, because that is actually what these stems do. they're not purely straight. They have those little sort of joining up knot bits in them. So where it's thicker at the end, that's completely fine to have that doing that. That's quite nice. Maybe one more of those. And I'm going to stick to the vintage photo. This is vintage photo I'm stamping in. And just pop that maybe down here somewhere. So that we've got that sort of movement downwards. Nice. And I'm imagining sort of looking up through the meadow flowers into the distance. Quick little wipe of that. And then maybe what I'll do, I'm wondering about having this be a slightly frosty meadow. There might be some white to come on here. Water brush. Just gonna clean up that end bit just a touch, because it's sticking out a little bit too much. I know I said they have a knottiness where they meet, but that doesn't mean I have to put up with a complete bend in the stem. That's good. And I might just clean up that a little bit. Here's the other advantage of working in the distress inks, although watch out, because the stenciling is also done in distress ink, so that will start to vanish if you're not careful. I'm enjoying that really quite a lot, but I am going to want a hit of white at some point. I think I'm going to put some twisted Umbels on as well, and I might stamp these in maybe in Archival, so that when I come to mess around with things, let's go coffee Archival. So this should be a slightly deeper brown than the vintage photo. I should be a bit careful, shouldn't I, about inking things up over these leaves, because I don't want to mess those up completely. So where do I want these? Oops. What I don't want is to drop them at this point. Okay, I need something under this side of, yeah, that wasn't a great stamping. Okay, so one of the things with this is, what I will then do is, I know there's ink on the places where I haven't managed to press the ink down. So with a gradual line up and just using my finger, I can be fairly certain that I'll get the remainder in about the right place, just with a little press. And then what I can do is with these, because if you see what I mean, where it didn't stamp, there's ink remaining. Where it did stamp, there isn't ink remaining. So it's not going to stamp again, because there isn't any ink there to stamp. How did I line that up? Okay, that's you. Great. And then just with a little pen to finish off these stems, because this is going to need a little bit of assistance. That pen doesn't work anymore. Out you go. This one might have some ink left in it. Yes, it has. So just add back in those stems if you want the full length. So rather than turning it upside down and doing it, you can do it this way. I'm going to get a better stamping of those somewhere else. It's because the Ledger Journal, obviously I've got more pages this side than this side, so what I need to do is put a little pad or a book underneath here. Must have something that'll probably do the job. Let's just put that under there. So I've got a firm stamping base under here. Let's get ourselves some slightly darker ones of these. In fact, maybe I'll leave the coffee underneath, but maybe what I'll do is go for a full-on scorched timber. This is going to be, this is going to be strong, hopefully. Scorched timber's amazing. Let's pop that down there. A nice firm stamping. Oh, that's lovely, just because it's also a deeper, darker brown than everything else that's going on. That's really pleasing to the eye. Let's pop some more of them down here. Let's make sure we've got a firm stamping surface. Nice. And then I'm going to want some going off in this direction as well, I think. drop some down here, and maybe one coming in the middle there, which means I'm going to do it just, oh, dropped it again. It's one of those days, clearly. I'm enjoying that quite a lot, but it's a bit too regular, so I'm going to have some growing right out of the top at an unexpected angle. So just some coming out here to break up the line of what's going on. And I'm not pressing down on the lower parts of those. That's nice. And then what I can do is just take another pen, just create that. They're not really coming to the ground, those. So here's another thing that I'm very happy to do, which is just come in and add a little bit of detailing back in by hand. Obviously, since I drew these in the first place, you might be shouting, well, that's not fair. You drew these in the first place. But I promise it's as simple as a little bit of scribbling to just refill in some of that detail. That's quite pleasurable. Drift of leaves downwards, drift of flowers in the other direction. But I'm going to need at some point a bit of a focal point to just really pull the eye in a particular direction. At the moment it's all a bit, I'm sorry, that was me dropping the book that I was using. It's all just a bit sort of everywhere, so the eye doesn't really know where to look yet. And at the moment my feeling is that I want the weight drawing us down to here. I don't know if it's going to stay that way when I do what I've got planned next, which is to add just a little bit of white frosting to these umbellifers. I paused because for this I really do need my mat back, because I want to put in a little bit of, this is the Snowflake Fresco Archival PaperArtsy chalky, beautiful chalky acrylic paint, and I'm going to use quite a hard bristled scabby brush, or maybe my terrible brush will do the job as well, but if you've got a sort of hogshead bristle brush, that'll be good. I'm going to dab down into that, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of white texture around the tops of these vintage photo ones. That's going to soften the stamping of that as well, because the vintage photo is still reactive to the moisture, and although it's not watery moisture, although it's about to be, oh, come out, would you? Thank you. I see you need a bit of cleaning around the top. I just want to create that sort of slightly frosty feel in my meadow with some of this, just adding texture. In some places, and you can see that softening these vintage photo ones quite nicely. I'm enjoying the effect of that, just making those less definite so that they sort of partner nicely. And of course I can't resist using up the rest of that paint with a bit of spatter, creating that frosty meadow softness. Some of these tones are starting to look even a bit pinky. That's partly, I think, the vintage photo, which can occasionally have a pinkish tone, but it might also be because in the background we've got those yellowy pages, even though they're gessoed over, so that the overall impact is turning a bit pink. Fortunately, these days I'm much less afraid of pink than I used to be. Just have a look how that's softened that stamping. I'm going to give this a quick blast with the heat gun, I think, just so that I can then see where we're at and see where I might want to add some collaging. As you can see, I've dug out one of the found relatives. I tried a couple of these on here, but I think she's the one I want to go with. And I think there might be, yeah, something wordy up in this corner. I've got this, I don't know where it came from, fragment of music, is just hanging around on the desk, so I'm wondering about maybe using that as a way of bedding her in. That's upside down. That's not going to please my music head. That side, that side. Let's go that side. Something maybe like that in through those meadow flowers, and maybe some mummy cloth. And then what I can do is I can have a balancing act going on up here that's going to again echo, feeling like it might be you. I think I want some sort of texture from these. I might just stick these in without thinking. I think that's what I want to do. I don't want to think. I don't want to plan. I want to find the glue. There it is. Just going to do this without too much thought, because that's going to get me closer to a state of flow, probably, to just let this happen and not overthink things. Let's glue that down. Let's glue that down. Let's glue her down. Ooh, what I did want to do was do a little bit of, so on the twisted umbels, you also get this lovely little grassy stem, and I think that could be quite nice. So before I glue her down, having said I was going to glue this down, not thinking, I am going to do a little bit with this, probably in one of the darker colours, I think. Let's go with some coffee, just because it'll give me some undergrowth here, which I think will be quite nice. Slightly more detailed. Yeah, that's just, it's just beefing up the lower parts of this. I mean it works beautifully alongside the grassy stencil, just to give a bit more detail next to that more airbrushed look. I think that's quite nice, and I might pop one just kind of poking in up the side here, just softly. Nice. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. It's given us a lot more weight down into this corner, which I think is going to support her rather beautifully. Let's put one maybe in there. I love this stamp. Once I start with it, it's quite hard to stop, as you can see. But without really showing us that in detail, it's giving us an impression of a lot more weight down in this corner. I think that's making quite a big difference. So she's going to go something like that. Let's get some mummy cloth in. Don't want to lose that little stem because I love it. What I might also use is this rather beautiful Gothic alphabet, just to add some texture. And we might do that. I might do that in Scorched Timber, because I think it might be quite nice as a fairly firm addition. Yes, I like that lettering. She's here. Let's keep it kind of anchored around her, because she's going to be the source of letters and music. She's a poetess. Maybe she's a lyricist, a songwriter, a composer, struggling in a male world to make her way. But let's let these letters be part of her writing, her thinking. So I'm not going to let them float out away from here, but what I might do is just have a little hovering echo of them up and around here. So those are secondary stampings, tertiary stampings, just giving us a little bedding again for what's about to come here. I'm going to try to keep this echoing what's going on down here, but lighter, because it's floating in midair. That's quite nice, quite enjoying that, to the extent that, yeah, I do. Having said I didn't want them floating everywhere, I do like just a little echo of them. Good. I haven't inked up again, as you saw. I'm just letting what's there come out to play. That's rather nice. Just wondering about knocking back this music just a little. Again, just because it's quite yellow. We'll see. No, because that's going to mess with the lettering that is stamped over it. I'm going to stick with it for now. Let's see if we can find something label-wise that will figure on 10. That seems like it might be her. Specimen number 110 of women whose work got lost. She's not just 110, is she? She's 37,007. The notion that only 110 women's work got lost over the centuries. Let's have a look in here, see what we've got. I've also got, I stamped when I was playing with these stamps for the first time, the Twisted Leaf set has got this rather beautiful photography ephemera, but that's too white, it's way too white. Although what was nice about that is it tells me the mummy cloth is going to be good, because the mummy cloth is going to give me a softer, fluffier whiteness that I'm going to quite enjoy. So let's put that on now. Let's go. Mummy cloth. It's going to go sort of across there, so I want about that much of it, I should think. And it always loosens up beautifully, so I'm going to mess with it, just pulling apart, just to get us that texture. Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I don't want too much glue holding it down because I want it on the move. I want it to get messier and messier over the years, with bits coming off, threads flying in every direction. So let's just pop that down, and it's her going over the top that will do as much to hold it down as anything else. Might scuff up these edges just a little bit. The blade of the scissors. Try not to slice myself up. And then that's revealing a little bit of card that I can then just ink, just for a bit of messy tinting. It might be time to put her down because I think I'm rather enjoying that where it is, because really this page is mostly about the background. This is just adding a little bit of storytelling in to this woman, completely inspired by nature, but finding herself feeling melancholy about how hard it is to share that with the world in the period she lives in. How much more fortunate, for the most part, we are now as women to be able to share our artistic talents, gifts, joys with the world. I'm gonna go in with this again. I'm gonna try not to think too hard. Gonna get this mummy cloth down as well. Cheese, I mean, in old-fashioned terms, it's simply cheesecloth. You don't have to think of it as spooky mummy cloth, not necessary. So with this, I don't necessarily want the full thickness of this quote chip in the art journal. So I'm just going to peel away, quite easy, just tuck a nail in there. Peel away a couple of layers of that to just give me something a little bit less thick, so that the book will be able to close and so on and so forth. Just going to check where I want this. Yeah, I think it's better coming off that side of the music. Again, not thinking too hard, just letting things happen. That already is almost enough. And since things are going so pink, I'm wondering about, no, I don't want to go any pinker. That was a really clear answer from my gut. No more pink. Enough with the pink. That's quite a nice, delicate little label in there. Maybe this one heads to this side. I just always find that a couple of these gives me, I don't know, something something of interest for the eye. Maybe tuck that under and that over. That's nice. And I do just need a little something heading in that direction. Pink? No, not pink. Well, that's a slightly less obstreperous pink than the other one was. No, I think I still don't want it. Don't think we want another oval. We've got an oval. Is there maybe just a little... That's too much the same shape as that. So as I've mentioned before, I know lots of people sort these out in advance and have them laid out in their books. But for me, there's something about the magic of the accidental find that still gives me joy, even though it does mean a little bit of shuffling. And I have been wondering about allowing these sort of blue greys a little bit more presence, but I don't think it wants to be as strong as that. Right, one more look in here, and if I can't find what it is I think I might want, although that could be it. No, too similar to the other again. What's that long one? What colour are you? Aha, aha. There it is. Now what I'm also wondering is, I picked up this sort of washer thing in the street the other day. No idea what it is. Giant metal washer. And I'm just wondering whether that has a place here. Or I've got a couple of smaller ones if that feels like too much. I do rather like it. It's got a kind of earth metal just has that presence to it, doesn't it? That can be quite... Wondering whether that is there and that is there. That's a bit too fussy. Something not quite right about that. I've got some other bits of metal hanging around. I might just go and fetch those and see if they want to do something. I've got little sort of buttons and curtain hooks and nails. Obviously it needs to be quite flat if it's going to stay in the journal. So there's another rusty washer I picked up there. That could be quite good. There are these sort of fragments of rusty wire that I think were probably, I don't know, holding up sweet peas or something. I'm just wondering about those for a little bit of random rusty texture. Let's put that back again. It's too heavy, isn't it? I think it's too heavy. Visually too heavy, I mean. It'll be fine in terms of the book page. These are fairly sturdy pages, particularly by the time you've got gesso and collaging and all kinds of things on them. Oh, I want, yeah, so I'm sure I've got somewhere some properly rusted washers. I'm going to run away again and see if I can find them. I've evidently hidden them very effectively, but I'm now just wondering about this rusty mesh here. No idea any longer where I picked it up. Can't remember. But I'm just thinking that maybe a little bit of this might be quite nice. I probably shouldn't cut it with my favourite shears. Although I have heard, that cutting things like metal can sharpen your scissors because it just gives them an abrasive edge. Sandpaper, cutting sandpaper, I heard, is supposed to... Yeah, see, I think that could be quite interesting. I'm gonna create two ends of it. Let's take away these little bits of wire. And with that there, that's starting to make me feel like this could work. Let's see what happens if we put a little bit of that up there. Yep. Starting to believe in this now. Isn't it interesting how sometimes metal, especially rusty metal, just frees up my brain. So I'm just trimming off randomly shaped bits of this. Yes, because it's about the cage. It's about the inability to escape, so that feminine softness is just kept constricted, confined, cribbed, cabined and confined, is how Shakespeare puts it, though not about a woman, I think, about maybe Caliban in the Tempest. I have to go back and check. Tempest is not one that I know terribly well. I think that's good, and I think that's making me want this really heavy dark washer as well. I think there's something working about that. It's just giving a bit more weight and ballast. Could drop a little lower, so that she's still visible to us, but she can't quite escape from these restrictions, constrictions. A little bit less of that. Oh, that's all now come apart. Yeah, but I think that is about as much as you want below. Be brave with your life. Try to be brave with your life. And I do want a little bit more coming downwards. Take ourselves another little bit of rusty mesh. Just maybe that much. I wish I knew where this came from. Mind you, I've got several yards there, so it's going to last me a while. I think there's something good about the drift of that downwards. Thank you for coming loose. That's great. I love that. So gluing this in, first of all, is going to be a thing about making sure enough of it is making contact with the surface behind. If it's too bendy and sticky-uppy. Sticky-uppy? Is that a good... Is that a good English phrase? You know, when it's all sticky-uppy. I sort of want another little bit heading in that direction. Have I got any of those bits left? I sort of want a bit heading up here. Is that wrong if it's just detached from there? Maybe if this is this way up. Aha. Maybe if that's that way up. Yes, there it is. That's what it is. So as simple as just don't entirely give up to start with. Check which way up is going to be the way that's satisfactory. Yeah, and then it is just going to be a question of some glue in some pertinent places that will hopefully just hold it in position. And then what I might do is put something heavy like a pot of gesso or ground on there while it dries. This hefty washer might want a bit of my gloopy glue, the Liquitex matte medium. I'm enjoying this now. I mean, I was quite enjoying it already, but I'm feeling her pain now with the metal barbed wire imprisoning her, the melancholy of the falling leaves, the feeling that maybe she's left it too late, or there's going to be no way to break free of the constrictions. That is going to need something heavy on it to pin it down, but we'll get to that. And the texture of that is just magic. The kind of gnarliness of the twisted wire. Put a bit more at the points where it's making contact. And I'm going to stick that on top of that for now to hold it down. I think that's doing okay, but we could... What else have I got that's heavy? That's heavy, but I need the glue out of it. Gonna get these glued down while I can see where I want them. It's those little labels. Labeling her, putting her in her place with names and numbers, when what she wants is the wild, organic freedom of nature in music and writing. Grand. That needs pressing down as well. Are you pressed down? Okay, so for this one I am going to use a bit of this, because when you're gluing something really heavy, this Liquitex just has that fabulous cream cheesy peanut buttery texture that just holds things in place immediately. So just a little, that's probably too much, a little dot of that in each place. It will dry clear, so don't worry if it oozes out from the edges, but I think that's quite good. And I'm going to have to wait a while for this to all dry and set and glue and be firm. But that's already, that's holding, that's holding, that's holding. Let's pop that on there. Let's pop that on there. I could use heat, obviously, to dry the glue, but my feeling is that I won't be able to get enough downwards pressure. That one's great because it's gluing to the mummy cloth. So it's sort of, what else have I got that's full enough still? There we go. So I'm going to leave those weighting down the metal and then come back for finishing touches. Okay, time to have a look at what we've got. Yes, I'd say that's firmly glued, and that's firmly glued, and that's firmly glued. Excellent. All good news. Let's see. So there's a really interesting thing when you use distress inks over gesso, this kind of softening effect that you get, which is really beautiful. But yeah, just be warned that that is what will happen. I'm pretty much done with this. I think it's beautiful. I don't mind at all that these browns have taken on a slightly pink turn. I'm just wondering if there's a bit of mileage in a little word down here. Let's grab a box of these. It might just be one word. I don't know. Choose to shine. That will need trimming. Be brave with your life. Choose to shine. Be brave with your life. That's quite nice. I would trim that down, obviously. Do what you love. Good idea if you get the chance to. Notes. Be brave with your life. Be authentic. Be brave with your life. Be authentic. Be brave with your life. Choose to shine. It's tempting. Noted. Noted. Theories. Be brave with your life. In theory, be brave with your life. In practice, it may not be so straightforward. Never stop exploring is nice. Believe in yourself is nice. I'm just wondering if it wants just a little extra bit of information. Never stop exploring, I'm enjoying, over choose to shine. Choose to shine just feels a bit meh. It doesn't really fit with the melancholy feeling of this. Choose to shine is a bit sparkly, and yes, I'm saying be positive, but it might not be that easy. In my heart, no, that's not the right thing. I've clearly inked that up for some other project and again decided it's not the right thing. Lucky is a state of mind. Yeah, not sure about that either. Luck is a real thing. Serendipity is a real thing. Shine like the stars. Again, too sort of shiny and twee. Travel the world over to find the beautiful. Keep room in your heart for the unimaginable. Unimaginable is a wonderful word. I like it a lot. Part of me is looking for the similar font. I do want to stick. Trust your heart. Be brave with your life. Never stop exploring. That feels like a good trio. Trust your heart. Be brave with your life. Never stop exploring. I do want to take the ends off here because I don't want it sticking out so much. And again, I'm going to take off some of the depth of this. I usually hang on to these bits of cardboard because they can be really useful for making something stick up a little bit, like having a foam. Yeah, I think I like that. I'm going to give it a little bit of inking again so that we just allow it to be bedded into the page a little. I'll need a bit more here. Never stop exploring. I really don't mind that that has also become a little bit creased. To connect it to that label, or have it come further out than that label, so that it's just in contact with the photo. Never stop exploring. Trust your heart. Be brave with your life. Trust your heart. No, trust your heart. Be brave with your life. Okay, let's put a bit of inking on here. And again, let's lose a bit of depth on this quote chip. Again, just get that nail in, peel it away. And yeah, I'm keeping all these offcuts because you never know when they're going to be useful. I quite like that with the fabric kind of some coming over the top of it. How does that look balance-wise? Yeah, I think that's quite good. A bit more inking just to stop it being quite so glaringly white. Yeah, I think we could go with this. There she is, exploring the world, exploring nature, exploring her own intellect, talents, creative urges, all of that. Never stop exploring. Whatever they say to you, trust your heart that tells you it is possible, it can be done. Even if the world never recognises it. Do it for yourself. Be brave with your life. I think that might be our lot. It might just be just a little bit of spatter to be done. I'm wondering, in fact, now that I've got this dark mesh, I'm wondering about another little spatter of the pumice stone. Maybe I don't want to do it with this. Well, I don't know. Let's go for a little dark spatter. There's something about the depth of that colour that is quite pleasing to me. And again, it's about that sort of ink splotches of the writing she does, and the pen doesn't quite work. That's nice. A little bit down there. And what's nice about that is it means there's something in the rest of the page that has the same depth as that deep dark washer there. So that those leaves are really becoming almost subliminal in the background. They're really, the eye doesn't necessarily recognise that that's what's going on. I don't want that in the middle of that A. So again, if you get a spatter where you don't want it, if you're quick, you can usually allow that to change. I'm going to pull out some more threads from here, make that a little wilder, a little crazier. If it's too crazy, or I think it's going to pull off altogether, then I will just give it a little bit of glue to help it stay somewhere useful or exciting or dynamic. I like that going across there, that's nice. Let's pull a bit more down here. Just encourage it in this direction. Again, the glue will dry clear, so at the point when you can see the glue, don't worry. I think that might be it. Or do I want a bit of white spatter as well? You know me and my white spatter. Or maybe rather than the paint, maybe we'll go with a bit of the bleed proof white ink. So as usual, I'm just going to pull some of it onto the mat and go for a little. It's partly because I want to lift the photo. Where it's on her face, I'll very rapidly get it off her face. Quite like it on here as well. It's lifting that. That's the main reason for having that. And I think I'm also going to like it around some of these umbelliferous heads. There's something again about capturing that notion of frost in the meadow, the coming of winter, frosty sparkle in the air. And it gives a contrasting lift to the page. It's quite nice over those dark grey bits. So I'm kind of specifically aiming in places now. Onto the umbels, back onto there. Make sure it's not on her face. A little bit on her photo though would be good. grand. So I will, as always, dive in for a close-up on this page, but I hope you've enjoyed that little bit of journaling playtime, little bit of story emerging about the woman at the heart of it, but mostly that autumnal beauty and melancholy and yeah, layers and layers drifting into the background. Thanks so much for your company. Stick around for the dive in for the close-up. If you've enjoyed today, give me a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, I would love to have your company on this creative journey. Thanks so much all, and happy crafting.